Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be about how I made Wunderbara the platypus. Now this one is going to be for sale in my shop, so he's up there right now if you want to see if he's available and hasn't already been adopted. So my shop is at creaturesofnat.com. He's got a completely wire armature inside, and resin hands and feet, and also a resin head, and it's got painted eyes this time rather than glass eyes. So that's a little look at the doll. Now I'm gonna donate a portion of it to a charity that is helping to feed all the animals that have suffered in the bushfires because there's no food for them. So they do weekly plane or helicopter drop-offs of carrots and just some other things for the animals to eat. So they need continuous funding for that. The next doll would be a kangaroo that I'll do that to anyway, but yes, I would like to donate a portion of this doll to charity to help all the little critters find some food. So if you want to know how I made this doll, I'll also remember to link the charity down below if you want to just donate yourself. But yes, if you want to see how I made this little platypus, then keep watching. So starting off with a resin cast of something that I sculpted quite a while ago now. I molded in silicone and then cast in resin. So this one's going to have painted eyes because platypus, they tend to have dark eyes anyway, you can barely see them. So I decided to paint these ones instead of using glass eyes. But I have a glass eye tutorial in my shop if you're interested in learning how to do that. So I'm just using some water-based acrylic paint just to paint everything. I have primed my resin, all of the surfaces that I'm going to paint, they're primed. I have a primer video on my channel if you want to see what primers that I use for resin. And I'm just using, the paint that I'm using is from the brand Chromacryl. It's an Australian brand, but you can find any sort of acrylic paint in your local craft stores. I'd recommend testing it out on the resin that you're using first to make sure it's compatible and there's no wacky stuff going on. Yeah. So I wanted to donate a portion of the proceeds to helping wildlife that were affected by the bushfires here in Australia. So I've got two dolls at the moment. One is a kangaroo, which will be going up next week, and this week's is a platypus. I was originally going to donate it to Wildlife Victoria, but I'm a little sketchy about government-funded charities. So I did a little bit of research, and I'm on a group on Facebook that assists rescuers and wildlife carers with food and medical supplies and supplies for pouches and stuff, and they're in need of some donations for food. So they do basically a helicopter drop off, weekly helicopter of carrots and stuff for the animals to go and eat because everything's been burnt and all their food's been burnt. So they're in need of some food donations or money for food donations, so they can continue to feed all of the animals that don't have anything to eat. So I think I'm happy with that charity, and I would like to donate a portion of the proceeds to from this platypus to that particular charity, and then with the kangaroo I'd like to do that as well, so they can have a sort of spread out donation. Anyway, getting on with the project. So I am cutting out the faux fur for this one. So I'm using a cream coloured faux fur for the underbelly of the platypus because they tend to have a nice cream coloured belly. And then I'll be using the same type of fur but in brown. Luckily I had this in stock, so it was absolutely perfect to use. It was meant to be. And I already had the parts cast, the feet that is, and I needed to cast the head, but that's no big deal because I could get it out of some leftover resin. And then so I'm cutting it out with some patterns that I've made on baking paper. I have a pattern video on my Patreon on how I make my body patterns, so if you're interested in learning, you can get access to it for $5 and above tiers, and you get access to a whole lot of different other videos as well. So I wanted to give a little bit of information about all of the animals that I make. So a little bit of information about platypuses. They're one of the 2 monotremes, and that means they're a mammal that lays eggs and produces milk. The other one is the echidna. The platypus can stay submerged for up to 2 minutes using their bill to search for food. Both sexes have spurs on their ankles, though the males are the ones that are venomous. They are found throughout eastern Australia. The platypus was hunted for its fur but was protected since 1905. They do, however, suffer from getting caught in fishing nets and drowning. So it's always a good idea to bring in your fishing nets, or don't even put them in freshwater creeks. Alrighty, so more on the doll. So this is a little look at the fur that I'm using for the belly. It's really good, nice quality fur. I don't have any of this fur left, unfortunately, and I can't remember where I got it from, but it works really, really well for a platypus. So you can see the basic shape that I've cut out of the belly. Next is the 2 sides, and I'm using this brown fur that's very, very similar to a platypus fur. And it's really thick and very similar to the other one that the cream fur as well, so meant to be. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting out all of the pieces using a small pair of sharp scissors. You can use various different tools. I prefer to use small scissors just because I'm able to control it a bit better, and I can feed it in between the pile of the faux fur and just cut the backing. But you just try whatever tool you want to try and see what works for you. So once I've done that, I can pin all of the sides together, and then I end up sewing it up on a sewing machine. I use a Brother sewing machine. It's really, really old, so I will be looking at getting a new one soon, and I want to look at one that is a little bit stronger and it has a little bit more grunt to get through the thick faux furs, because this one I've snapped a few needles with it, and I have to go kind of really slow just so it doesn't overwhelm the foot and the needle, and sometimes it just has a little freak out. So I would really like to get one that is a bit stronger. Anyway, this is what it looks like all sewn up, and I leave for this one because it's a little bit different than my regular sort of doll. So I've left the tail in open, and also the legs as well, which is normal, and also the part where the head will attach to the resin, and then I flip it the right way around. So sometimes it can be a bit of labor intensive exercise to flip it the right way around, but I've sort of learned that if you leave a big enough opening, you can get the job done pretty quickly. It just requires a little bit more hand sewing, which I hate hand sewing. But I mean, if you want to make dolls, you have to learn how to hand sew. So once it's flipped the right way around, this is what you will have. You can see the shape is coming together, and it already sort of looks like a platypus already. Sometimes they just look like a big fluff ball, but you just need to give it a trim, and the body will start to take shape. And then I can start making an armature. And for this one, I'm using a wire armature, and I have a wire armature tutorial in my shop as well, if that's something that you want to learn how to do. It comes with a PDF and a video tutorial, and I also have a video on how to attach that armature to resin, and yeah, they're in my shop at creaturesofnat.com, so head over there if you want to learn how to do it, and yeah. Once I've fed that through and attached all of the resin pieces, I can start gluing the body on and sewing everything up. So I usually start off by gluing the head to the neck. This makes it have like a solid sort of base, so when you start sewing things up and adding polyfill and stuff, it's nice and secure, and the body's not going to move around anywhere and sort of twirl around on your armature. And I use just a glue from my local store here called Spotlight. It's just a fabric glue. It's clear and it's tacky, and it dries in about 5 minutes, but I usually leave it overnight, and it will dry a bit more, and it's kind of difficult to pull off the resin, so this one works perfectly. If you're going to use any glue though, I do recommend doing a little test on your resin to see how it reacts as well, because resin can be a little bit temperamental. So once that's dry, I can go ahead and add all of the stuffing. I use polyfill for my stuffing. I also have a video more in depth on polyfill and what I use to stuff my dolls with. So if you want to learn about that, it will be on my channel as well. But yeah, I basically just feed it in and use a little stick to put everything into place. And then when I'm happy, I can start sewing everything up. So this is moving on to the sewing. So I use a ladder stitch to sew all of my open seams up, and I also have a video as well because I've had a lot of questions about ladder stitches. So there's a video specific where I use faux fur, and you can learn how to do a ladder stitch on there. And it's always a good idea to get yourself some good quality thread as well, because there's nothing worse than using cheap thread and it's snapping on you. Then you have to basically sew up all your work again. And the same deal is ahead. Once I've sewn the whatever I'm sewing up, I use that same tacky fabric glue to glue the legs to the resin pieces, so the feet or whatever. And I always try to get the thread in the glue, so it's that little bit extra security that things aren't going to come undone. And yeah, I use the same tacky fabric glue and it works really well. And I usually sew up the front end first, so the front legs, and then I'll move on to the back legs, and then eventually the tail. It just kind of makes sense to me. So this is the other option of the body that I have, the technique that I use to make bodies. Another option you can find on my Patreon as well. I have 2 videos of projects that I did previously. One is an okapi and the other one is the maned wolf. And I go through how I make those bodies and the differences that I did. So yeah, link will be in the description if you're interested in that. So once everything's sewn up, this is what we have. Needs a little bit of a trim. I added some fur onto the face, and I will be trimming it up. And I have a trimming video on my Patreon as well if you're interested in that. So this is what we have once I've trimmed everything up, and he is finished and ready to go to his new little home. So like I said, I want to donate some of the proceeds to charity to help feed the animals. So that's pretty much it from me today. Thank you for watching. I want to thanks to my patrons for supporting me. I really do appreciate it. You can find this little one in my shop if it hasn't already been adopted at creaturesofnat.com. You can check me out on Instagram and Facebook at creaturesofnat as well, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!
Thank you.